and then my parents said we couldn't keep it, and I was feeling really emotional for some reason, so I started crying, and they were like, "What's wrong with you?" And they just really want this stray cat.
Okay. So when you're doing these, you want your memo page out so that you're like looking back and forth between your clues. Those are your clues. You fill in things from your memo page and do a little bit of algebra. Like if you have fractions, you would get a common denominator. There's something I'll show you maybe today called multiplying by the conjugate. I'm going to fly through these, but after I finish each one, I'll look and go questions because they have to be done a certain way. And I'm such a not a certain way person that this is a big deal, okay? All right, so number one, what I'm trying, cosine cubed, I think I did the, didn't I do 1 and 2?
I think 1 was done, no 2 was not.
No.
All right, so can I skip 1? Is everybody? Okay.
I thought it was 4 and 6 that you did.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, so here, did I do 1?
No.
Okay, so number 1. Number 1 is I'm writing it down and get thinner. All right, so I have cosine cubed theta plus sine squared theta cosine theta. And I'm supposed to turn it into cosine theta, which just don't mess with that. Just you're through and you can check mark that. So a little algebra step I would make here, because I don't know anything about cosine cubed, is I would factor out cosine, not divide by it. I'm going to factor out cosine. So it gives me cosine theta. Hopefully a lot of y'all got this. That leaves me cosine squared theta. If I take a cosine out of this, it leaves me cosine squared. And if I take a cosine out of this, it leaves me sine squared. And you should by now know what cosine squared plus sine squared is. What's that? 1. And so cosine theta times 1 is cosine theta. Done. Okay? While I'm thinking about it, on your memo quiz next, if we have one next class, I'll put it on the assignments if we do. But it would be some of your new identities could pop up on your memo quiz where I say sine squared plus cosine squared and you say 1. Or sine over cosine and you say tangent, okay?
I was just confused why wouldn't you only multiply cosine by like sine? Why would you also multiply by cos or by?
Okay, so this was my given. And Kate, what's our first rule of factoring?
Take out what's in common.
Take out what's in
Oh,
common.
I see. Oh, right. And then
So they both have a cosine in common. Like that separates my terms. This has a cosine in it, and that has a cosine in it.
Oh, I see.
Okay. All right, let's go to number 2. All right, so number 2. I don't know why it doesn't stay that way. Okay, number 2 is cosecant squared theta minus cosine squared theta cosecant squared theta. And boy, you're going to want to know later on this year and in calculus, or girl, you're going to want to know, I don't know what's there for you. Oh man, you're going to want to know, okay? You're really going to want to know that that just all turns into 1 and you can go on with your life, okay? It's really important to know these things that right now I'm just telling you. I'm saying, hello, all of that equals 1. All right, first thing I'm going to see is it looks very like factorable. So I'm going to factor out cosine squared. Sorry, my writing's so bad. Cosine squared theta. If I take a cosine squared out of the front, it leaves me 1. If I take a I'm sorry. What am I factoring out? Cosecant squared. All right, CSC. If I factor out cosecant squared, it leaves me 1. If I factor out cosecant squared, it leaves me cosine squared. All right, this is going to take some doing. You'll get used to that. Every time you see, just like when you see 7 minus 3, you write 4. When you see 1 minus cosine squared, you'll get so used to it, you'll go, oh, that's sine squared. Okay? Because on your memo page, you have sine squared plus cosine squared equals 1. So if I say 1 minus cosine squared, if I subtract it to this side, what's left on this side? Sine squared. You're supposed to know how to rearrange that fact accordingly. If sine squared plus cosine squared equals 1, then 1 minus cosine squared equals sine squared. In fact, what would happen if I typed this into my calculator into y1 and this into y2? They would be just alike. All right, now, do y'all see reciprocals? Always keep an eye on your prize. You're trying to get 1. You can change either one of these. Like cosecant, I'm gonna change that to 1 over sine. Cosecant squared is 1 over sine squared times sine squared. These cancel out, and I get 1. That's what I was going for. And so I showed every step. Somebody reading my work will know how I got to 1. No magic answers. Don't all of a sudden get stuck and just go, yeah, that equals 1. I think I'm going to go for that, okay? One thing about this step that's real important. In fact, sometimes even on the exam, sometimes we put this as a true false. Like sometimes we'll put something like sine cubed plus cosine cubed equals 1. Or sine plus cosine equals 1. Those are false. If I type in sine theta plus cosine theta and hit graph, you won't get 1. Those are called the Pythagorean identities. They have to be squared. Do y'all see what I mean? So how was I able to call cosecant squared 1 over sine squared? That's because of this. If I have cosecant squared, doesn't that mean cosecant theta times cosecant theta?
Yeah.
All right, so that's 1 over sine theta times 1 over sine theta. And 1 times 1 is what? 1. And sine times sine is this funny sine squared theta. So with reciprocals, you can. If you have tangent to the 4th, you can call that 1 over cotangent to the 4th. Because that meant 1 over cotangent, 1 over cotangent, 1 over, okay? But the Pythagorean have to be squared. That's the Pythagorean theorem. It's a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Okay, so let's go on to number 3. I may have done it, but let's do 3. I don't remember which ones I did and which ones I didn't. All right, so number 3. 3 is secant theta sine theta equals tangent theta. You will get so good at this from practice that may even happen on the sheet for some of y'all where you saw it. You're like, yeah, I see it. I don't care. I mean, I'm glad. I do care. I'm proud of you. But I still have to know that you know what's going on. Like some of you might know, oh yeah, that equals tangent. You'll get better at it. Which one of those 2 words would you be more prone to change? More apt to secant. So I'm going to change secant into 1 over cosine. And I'm just going to leave sine alone. Isn't that sine over 1?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm okay with that's all you do, and then you just write tangent. But a lot of y'all are going to want to write sine over cosine. And then I've told you the other day, you have to go in and announce, I know what that is. I've had a few students that left it sine over cosine and they left and went to another problem because they were lost. They didn't memorize their quotient identities. So I have to know that you know. You could go straight from here to here. I will follow that.
Okay, so you have to write sine of cosine equals 10.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, if you just leave it at sine over cosine, I'm going to think you're lost and that you don't know what sine over cosine is. You have to announce to me, I know I have tangent. You know, most things when you ask me, this class doesn't do this kind of thing much. You just take me at my word, but sometimes, you know, test or quiz or doing a worksheet in class, you'll call me over and say, do I have to show this step? Well, what could you have done probably by the time you called me over? Just show the step, okay? Probably if you're in doubt is probably something I need to see. Okay, so the next one is cosecant theta over secant theta.
Wasn't this one of the ones we did already?
I did it. I'm going to do it again. Thanks, Kate. I did it. Okay? I probably wanted to do this one because at first it's tricky until you see it. But a good idea, you know cotangent's cosine over sine. So it's a good idea to change all of that. Please just walk down the path of the puzzle. Whatever pieces you find to put together, don't try to force anything. A good idea is to change everything to sine and cosine sometimes, like 90-something% of the time, but not always. So cosecant, I'm going to make it 1 over sine. Secant, I'm going to make it 1 over cosine. And then Kate's right, the other day we did that change flip. And you could just write it like this, cosine over sine. And then like Ava was asking me, oh, that's cotangent. I'm done. Okay? Again, imperative that you know these things. All right, number 5. There's a few different ways to do number 5.
It's like a puzzle.
Okay, so number 5, you have secant squared theta minus 1 over tangent theta. And we're supposed to prove that just equals tangent theta, okay? Again, some tutors, or maybe your big sister or somebody in another class, would put that over 1 and cross multiply, and it would work beautifully. But that's not what I'm trying to get you to prove. Of course it would work. If I give you things that already said these are equal, I don't need you to cross multiply. I've already said they're equal, okay? You're trying to morph that into that. All right, on your memo page, you see tangent squared plus 1. I can't believe it took me so long to get tech up here. Is that awesome? Like I wrote all.
He fixed it in like 2 seconds
I know.
too.
And it was
Yeah,
like
almost like
6
it.
months for me to get them up here. They come immediately together. Okay, or was it just our Tim just then? Yeah, he
I
didn't
think
go
just
with
one.
John. Usually they come together. All right, tangent squared plus 1 equals secant squared. Please learn that fact inside out. You can rearrange all sorts of things. What's secant squared minus 1? Tangent squared. Okay, so you're just rearranging it. You see secant squared. Oh, subtract the 1. That gives you tangent squared theta over tangent theta. And that's tangent times tangent over tangent, which just equals tangent. You're
That's
done.
the one I got.
Okay? There's other harder ways to work this, by the way.
Oh,
See on your look.
I did it in a terrible way.
There are more difficult ways to work it. Okay, now listen, girls. Now that you see these tied together, always recognize that tangent squared and secant squared. Those are tied together, okay? And you could change secant squared to 1 over cosine squared. You'd have a fraction in your fraction. You'd have to get a common denominator. You could finally get there, and I would grade it and give you credit, but we want to do it the easiest way. So now let's go to number 6 and see what's similar. All right, 6 is similar. On your memo page, you have cotangent squared theta plus 1 equals cosecant squared theta. I don't remember what variable I used, but that's on your memo page. It's a math fact that you can draw on. All right, so you had cosecant squared theta minus 1. And all of this also is supposed to equal tangent theta. All right, what's cosecant squared minus 1?
Cotangent squared theta.
Cotangent squared theta. So take your time. Good, girls. That's cotangent squared theta. That's a cotangent.
I got that.
All right, which gives me 1 over cotangent.
Yep.
All right, so that reduces to 1 over cotangent, which is also in your memo page as tangent. Okay? They're really fun. I mean, you already know where you're headed. I mean, if you like working puzzles, they're fun. All right, number 7. 7 I liked. You can imagine a certain time, again, even in pre-cal when we start solving equations, if I said to solve this equation, secant theta, sine theta, cotangent theta. Girls, after all we've learned about graphing, that almost hurts my head to think about trying to graph sine theta, secant theta, cotangent theta. Good Lord, it couldn't get any worse. Except for a few holes in the graph or asymptotes, what is this always going to equal? 1, okay? So secant is 1 over cosine. I'm not going to change the word sine because I usually don't. And cotangent is cosine over sine. Some of y'all probably got this.
Oh, I did.
Yeah, and then you can
Sine
cross.
cancel.
That's so
One.
fun.
It's really fun.
I did it. Oh, I did it. I made cotangent 1 over tan.
Okay, but from now on, look at your memo page. Do you have cotangent as cosine over sine? Go straight to it.
Wait.
Do you have that? Under quotient I did.
Oh yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I think I like rearranged it
Okay.
so that I got that. I still got that it was 1.
You'll still get it, but it's a little faster here, okay? And that would be fine. I mean, I would grade what you had, but I would encourage you to notice cosine over sine is
So then I got
cotangent.
sine over sine, and then which equals 1.
That's gross.
Okay, but are you okay with this
Yes,
too? Okay. All right, number 8. Cosine
Wow.
squared theta minus
You're
sine
bad.
squared theta equals 1 minus 2 sine squared theta. All right, I feel like I'm going to base it on this. Sine squared plus cosine squared equals 1. You don't have to write that. You're all looking at that on your memo page. All those squares, girls, do you see draw my eye to that? Now look at the right-hand side if you didn't get this one. Look at the right-hand side. There's no cosines there. Do y'all see that?
Yeah.
I gotta get rid of cosine squared. I like having minus sine squared. I'm pretty happy with that if I'm trying to put a puzzle together. What can I put in place of cosine squared? What is cosine
1
squared?
over secant squared. maybe?
You could, but
One-
the easiest thing, go for this
1
word.
minus sine.
Yeah, cosine squared is 1 minus sine squared. If I tell you that fact, you can rearrange it all sorts of ways. Get used to rearranging that, okay? So some of you have said it, cosine squared is 1 minus sine squared. So now I have cosine squared, look girls, is 1 minus sine squared, that's that, minus another sine squared. Oh, how many minus sine squareds do I have? 1 minus 2 sine squared, I'm done. Okay? And I'm telling you how I'm making my decisions. I hope that'll help you. I'm not saying you shouldn't have done what you did, but I'll guide you to the easiest way and my thought process after millions of years of doing this, okay? I keep an eye on my prize and I think about, oh, I'm okay with that, but I'm not okay with this. By the way, this is actually a math fact we'll write on our memo page later, just not right now. Moving on, are we okay?
Yeah.
All right, so Dakota is about to happen again on number 9. You may have done similar to what you told me, but now I encourage you for cotangent to go straight to what, girls?
Cosine over sine.
All right, yeah, we're so familiar with tangent, sine over cosine. You could have put 1 over that, but cotangent, we could go straight to cosine over sine times sine. And that's like over 1 if you need something. That cancels and you're done. You don't have to rewrite it. If you don't want
Wait,
to.
what's that first thing say?
Cosine over
thing?
sine. Cotangent theta is cosine over sine.
Yeah.
Are we ready for 10?
Yeah.
Bryn's ready for 10. Everybody else?
Yes.
Y'all all
Yeah,
okay?
just pick up.
This
ten.
makes
This
me
one was
want to
really
learn.
confusing. I really didn't like this one. Did you feel
Like
that?
10?
No,
Because there was like,
I'm just like
you know when there's like
beta.
fractions over fractions?
Okay. Which you're gonna have a lot of, and I'll steer you in better and better ways to work.
Well,
changing
when
it.
I was doing it,
I just
I
don't
was
like
like
to keep changing.
not really understanding,
like
but
it.
now I get it and I'm
I always
doing it
just say
all,
multiply
and I
by
feel
the
like I'm doing a
What's the
fun
Greek
math
letter
puzzle.
for E?
The amount of
Egg.
times my tutors said
Egos.
reciprocal
Oh.
yesterday.
E.
Anyway, moving on. Okay. Did y'all see I'm going towards sine?
Yes.
That makes me feel like I should change tangent to sine over cosine, not 1 over cotangent, okay? You got 2 choices. Just like in your crossword puzzle, sometimes you think, well, I could use brown or I could use black. But in my little scenario the other day, the color, I think one of the 2 fit in there better, okay? So, given the word sines over there, I want to go toward that word. So tangent is sine over cosine. And secant is 1 over cosine. Alright, so I have a fraction, keep, change, from division to multiplication, and then flip. And you're done. Cross out, and you have sine. So you got a lot of these. Not many people taking that, so that's good. A few of you have been honest, like, oh, I got stuck on this one.
Same thing.
Hopefully, even if you got them right, just by talking calmly to you is helpful.
It makes more sense like explaining it as a whole, 'cause, like,
Yeah.
when you do it wrong and like
When
and you
you
go back and see what happened, it's
It's
just like
nice to know how I make my decisions.
When you
like
do it,
that.
it makes sense, and then when I'm trying to do it alone at home, nothing makes sense.
Well, you know why it makes sense with me when I do it, other than I've done it a million times? Is when I was in pre-cal, I had to go home and do it over and over again until it made sense to me. But Miss White, my pre-cal teacher, she kept giving us guidance, and we would go home and tackle them. I always try not to give you too many, especially when they get a little longer. But these had so much the same stuff going on, I thought it was good just to knock out 1 through 14. But it's got to click in your own head. But I don't know that it would click if I didn't give some guidance. 1 plus tangent squared screaming at me for the Pythagorean identities. There's other ways to work this problem, which we can talk about if you'd like to. I don't want to confuse you by doing things different ways. I know my identities so well. Right now you're memorizing. That's why I give you memo quizzes, because if you don't have them memorized, you're not even going to recognize it. You're going to go, I don't know what to do. But if you've memorized them, 1 plus tangent squared is what? Secant squared, okay, on your memo page. What, do y'all see it? 1 plus tangent squared is flat out secant squared.
Can
Times
you also
cosine
do
squared.
1 plus sine over cosine squared?
Let's say with this now. This is the best way to work it, like I said. I see 1 plus tan squared, I go straight to secant squared. Secant's 1 over cosine. I just explained that if it's secant squared, it's 1 over cosine squared, because there's 2 of them. Times cosine squared, cancel, I get 1. Okay? There are other ways to work this problem that are pretty good. I'm just gonna pause here because I think this is the best way. Then I'll take Bryn's question. Okay, Bryn?
Oh, I don't have a question right now.
I'm gonna show you another way to work it, okay? Are y'all ready for me to show you a different way that I might see when I'm grading your papers? Alex might do it one way and get it right, and Alina might do it another way and get it right. And I'm gonna grade what they write and count it, okay? If they get me there some way, there's not one unique way to solve our crossword puzzle. I feel like there's one best way. Alright, I would do that because 1 plus tangent squared is flat out secant squared, done. But if I go back to the original, you don't have to write this down, you can just watch. Okay? There are students that I see don't know 1 plus tan squared secant squared as well as they do tangent is sine over cosine. So if you have tangent is sine over cosine, and wouldn't there be 2 of these here? So wouldn't it be sine squared over cosine squared? Are y'all okay with that? Tangent squared means tangent times tangent. So that's sine over cosine times sine over cosine. Hey, watch, girls. Don't write it down if you don't want to, but just watch. Now I'm going to distribute. I have a student that might distribute here. Would it help if I turn this way, Alina? Can you see okay? Sometimes you know. Okay, now if I distribute, that gives me cosine squared, watch girls, plus sine squared, because the cosine squareds cancel out. And what's cosine squared plus sine squared? 1.
Yeah, that's
So they also can get there. That's okay. I just want to drive the point home that 1 plus tangent squared secant squared, secant's a reciprocal of cosine. It was a great way to get to it. All right, let's go quickly to number 12.
This one was hard.
Huh? Am I on 12?
I just figured
Oh
it
my
out
goodness. Okay, a little princess
Timmy
pig.
did this one this morning.
All right, number 12. I think I
think
need to
number
move the pig. Hi.
Guys, doesn't this look like rocket science?
Yeah.
Like I feel like I'm
My
just
uncle's a rocket scientist.
This took me actually a really long time.
like I look so professional.
It's not going, usually it'll still go down.
Calculus on the airplane.
That's weird.
There's like one next to me.
Usually I can move them all around. Goodbye,
I think there's
little
like
pig.
birds.
Now it's even tinier.
Little tiny pig. All right. Secant theta plus tangent theta times secant theta minus tangent theta. You're going to be mad at me if you were stuck on this one. Everybody listen. There's different ways to work this problem. There's one that takes 2 steps that I'm going to show you. Okay, again, it comes with you really trying your homework and being familiar with the identities. Like everything in life, it comes from messing up and learning a better way. Like if you're in singers and everybody, Dr. Lolio stops and goes, wait, that part was wrong, try it this way or whatever. Okay, or like my piano teacher, whose name was also Miss White. Like my pre-cal teacher, I've never put those 2 together because one was in 5th grade, one I was in high school. Anyway, Miss White would go, stop right there. You're not pushing the pedal down correctly to get that chord, blah, 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 and I'd start over. Okay, but that's the only way I was going to learn is by messing up and trying really hard, which I didn't really in piano. But anyway, okay. There was another thing I was going to say here, and I can't remember what it was. Let me think. No? Okay. Girls, I know my identities. Again, it sounds like I'm bragging. God hopes I know my identities. If I don't, there's something wrong, okay? But you've got to get to know your identities. There's that secant squared, tangent squared's on your page. those two things go together. I almost always change secant and tangent into sines and cosines, but not if they're in the problem together. I'm gonna do FOIL.
Yes, that's what
Okay.
Oh wait, I think I
I
did
love
something wrong,
those.
but I still got the right answer.
This gives me secant squared theta. That gives me minus secant tangent. What does this give me? Plus secant tangent, those cancel out, minus tangent squared. Well, on your memo page, you have a math fact that says tangent squared plus 1 equals secant squared.
So that equals,
So what is secant squared minus tangent squared?
1.
1.
so 1 equals 1.
Oh,
I did FOIL wrong.
So do you see part of what I wanted to do today was again drive the point home. Your sine squared plus cosine squared is 1. Secant squared and tangent squared belong together. Cotangent squared and cosecant squared are happy together. Okay? This would work if you went to sines and cosines. It does work. Okay? Eventually. And it works. But again, I'm a proponent of this form. Okay, and now 13 follows this again. Hey girls, I'm kind of sorry. I like this sheet, but I'm a little bit sorry that, listen up. I'm a little bit sorry that they just keep throwing us the tangent squared, secant squared. Then you won't get used to the cotangent squared, cosecant squared ones. Y'all see there's 3 Pythagorean identities. You need to be good at all of them. Cosecant and cotangent are good together. Tangent and secant are always good together. Just wait till you get to calculus, so much so that the derivative of tangent is secant squared. They're so close and tied to each other, okay? So anyway, my job to get you used to it. All right, I've got this here. What did we just say secant squared minus 1 was? Tan squared. So you have tangent squared over tangent,
Equals tangent.
which is tangent. And on 14, we have cosine theta
Yeah.
over 1 minus sine squared theta. So you have cosine theta. What's 1 minus sine squared? Cosine squared. All right, now where do you have a cosine left? Cosine over cosine on the bottom. Thanks, Mia. So we have 1 over cosine, which is secant. Keep an eye. Did y'all see I looked to make sure what I was going toward? I want to get the word they gave me. Secant. Okay, it makes me so happy to write way over here in this corner. All right, now, sorry that she left. So, we're gonna do the last 3. So find them. Okay.
Oh, I don't have the last one.
All right,
Wait, I did
15.
the funniest thing. I did my pencil.
Have we done that?
I wrote 1
Oh, I
over
did it
cosine
right
theta,
here.
and then
I
wrote,
just
like,
did
1
it.
over 1
All right, so
And then I
Kate,
did
I
it.
changed 1 minus sine squared
Yeah.
to cosine squared.
Okay.
And cosine squared is heavy on the bottom, so give me 1 over cosine,
Yeah.
which is secant.
Okay.
We're gonna learn some new identities, so it's important that you like really wrap your head around the ones we have so far.
No, I've opened a gate I don't want to open.
All right, now for some reason we switched to chickens, whatever someone sent me. Okay,
A gateway.
so number 15. 15 is tangent squared theta minus tangent squared theta sine squared theta.
We
And
are
we're
writing this
supposed-
on our memo page or no?
Oh, this is, you're right.
Oh, okay.
We're doing number 15.
Thank you.
All right, right, and more messy than usual today. Anyway, this is a term and this is a term, and they both have the word tangent squared in them. Tangent squared, I'm factoring it out. Factor out what's in common. There are other ways to probably work this one, but they would be most unfortunate. They take you a really long way to get through them. So notice when you have things in common, and that leaves me 1 minus sine squared, which you should be getting used to. Okay, look at my goal, by the way. I don't even want tangent in there. What am I gonna change tangent squared into?
Secant minus.
I don't wanna go towards secant, look at my word.
Sine.
Okay, do you see how I'm making my decision
So
on it?
it's cosine, or, no, sorry.
I'll sign over.
Cosine, okay? Tangent sine over cosine. So this is squared, so it's gonna give me sine over cosine times itself. So this is gonna give me sine squared theta over cosine squared theta. And what is this? What's 1 minus sine squared?
Cosine.
Are you sure?
Squared.
Squared. Alright, so we have sine squared plus, cosine squared is equal to 1. Okay? Sine squared plus cosine squared equals 1. So what is 1 minus sine squared equal? Cosine squared. I've said this all day so far. Get used to those Pythagorean identities. Again, let's talk about what Anya brought up. I've been preaching the Pythagorean identities, and so understandably she thought about tangent squared had something to do with secant squared. But also, do you see, I keep an eye on my prize. This would be a great one to change everything to sines and cosines. This cancels, and we're done. Okay? That's what I was going to say. When I said I forgot what I was going to say. In pre-cal and calculus, all of a sudden, when you've seen some Big Bang Theory or a commercial for Exxon and there's all this math writing on the board, or even a picture of Einstein, then you all of a sudden can understand the writing on the board. All those things that look like, oh my gosh, those people are rocket scientists. Now
I just said that. I was like,
now
That's
you're
what
in.
she said it.
Yeah.
I was just thinking about it.
Okay, number 16. I don't know what I'm going to do here. I don't know if I've ever worked 16. So let's just see what happens.
It just looks so professional.
It does.
Mine is just really messy handwriting, so it's.
All right, we're going toward a sine cosine scenario eventually. Do y'all see that?
Yeah.
Yes.
However, 1 plus cotangent squared is screaming at me. And like I said, I haven't worked this problem that I know of. It's the first year I think I've given this worksheet. What's 1 plus cotangent squared?
C of C squared theta.
You could, one option is to change it to that, cosecant squared theta. So let's do that, just because it was wanting, I just sort of wanted to. Now that wasn't super helpful. I eventually, girls, am gonna have to go full over to sines and cosines. So I'm gonna do that now. What's cotangent? Yeah, it's 1 over tangent, but we don't want that one, right? We want cosine over sine, because that takes Nazareth closer to the word she wants. So that's how she makes her decision. Cotangent is cosine over sine. And cosecant's 1 over sine from lots of memo quizzes. And if it's squared, what is this? Cosecant squared? 1 over sine squared. Keep change flip. So I have cosine over sine times sine squared over 1. What happens?
Cross out.
Sine goes into sine squared. And it leaves you what you're looking for, doesn't it? Cosine theta times sine theta, or sine theta times cosine theta. Again, trying to give you a really good window into why I'm choosing what I choose. Alright, now watch what happens on 17. I've been dying to say this. Up until now, like on this last problem, I had this. On 16, I could not have done what I'm about to do with 17. Hey girls, if this had been flipped over, everybody pause, pencils down maybe for a minute, okay? If the problem, had come at me like this, if the problem had come at me like this, instead of this, do y'all see now I have a common denominator? I could break this up into 1 over cotangent and cotangent squared over cotangent. Like for instance, 4 plus 3 over 5 as opposed to 5 over 4 plus 3. Is it okay if I make that 4 over 5 plus 3 over 5? That is A-okay. Isn't that 7/5 right now? What's 4 over 5 plus 3 over 5? It's time we made sense of all those math words that were flying around in your past that actually made sense. When your teacher said common denominator. Even in a political sense, does it common mean that everybody gets one? common health insurance, things like that, okay? So that would be 4 over 5 and 3. Isn't that still 7/5, girls? Justin, does this have a common denominator? I cannot make that 5 over 4 plus 5 over 3. You cannot do that, okay? So let's look at one that makes a little more sense. Let's say I had 4 plus 6 over 5. Isn't that 2? 10/5?
Yes.
All right, if you have 4/5 plus 6/5, that's still going to be 10/5. It's okay to split it up with my common denominator. But if it's upside down, 5 over 4 plus 6, do you see I can't make it 5 over 4 plus 5 over 6? Okay? All right, and we always have to stop and say those things. All right, so now, I guess we'll go to more chickens.
It's already 45.
I know, it's flying too
They went by
fast.
really quick for some reason.
Time
Yeah.
flies better when you're having fun.
All right, so what I'm going to do, girls, on sine theta plus cosine theta, and let me tell you how I decide to do this.
Is
'Cause
this 17?
this is 17 now, good question. When you're got more experience and you see secant, cosecant, you're pretty much happy with sines and cosines, because can't you all get secants and cosecants from sines and cosines? So I don't want to change anything, plus I can't think of anything to change anyway. Do y'all see this plus sign on the top and I have a common denominator? I'm going to write this over that and this over that.
Oh.
So I'm going to write sine theta over the denominator. In fact, I would argue, isn't this why they could even say that? Probably somebody had this expression and they had a common denominator so they could add them together. We're pretty much through if I teach you that skill.
I think what just got me confused now is that when if you just did that, like solved that, it would just get you back to where you were originally.
What cancels here?
Sine.
Okay.
There we go. Yeah, you're exactly right. That's why I'm able to do it, Dakota. If I went backwards, I'd go back to where I started from.
Okay.
But you see why I wanted to separate them.
Yeah.
And cosines cancel here. And what's 1 over cosine? Secant.
plus
And 1 over sine is cosecant.
Oh, that's easy.
Okay, but that's why I didn't assign it for homework. I didn't know if you would think of that. So if you have A plus B over C, you can make that A over C plus B over C. You can divide them up with a common denominator. Okay? All right, now let me hand you out these sheets. And I haven't posted homework just because I didn't know how long this would take. But if you would really quickly get 2 and pass them around. Oh, here, let me separate them. And there's new identities that next class will write on your memo page. But the good news is that, I'll get you later. Girls, right now, all of the identities you need for homework are on the top of this page. Next class, we'll write them on our memo page, okay? And we'll talk about them more. Y'all see how I threw identities at you and then we talked about them more. And
It also
depending,
comes more to you as you just like keep doing the problems.
absolutely,
So,
yeah. There must be bunnies in here. It was pigs and chickens and bunnies.
Are these worksheets the homework you said?
So
Who
we did the checks. We did do the checks.
Did we do it? There's a bunny. Okay. All right, girls, listen up. Okay, everybody, oh, I don't know, did you get something different? You should have 2 pages.
Yeah.
There you go. All right. Now, suppose on a memo quiz, and just stay with me for, I'll keep an eye on the clock. Suppose on a memo quiz you had like sine of 15 degrees. All right, well, that's not fair. I don't have any of those in my thing, okay? Now, you might wisely think, wait a minute, I can do 45 minus 30. And listen, please listen carefully. Would y'all agree that that equals the sine of 15 degrees?
Yes.
Okay? Now, while Kate may have thought, oh, I can do 45 minus 30, Ava may have thought, I could do 60 minus 45. You both know about 30, 45s, and 60s, so you might work it different ways, okay? However, now what you can't do, which is big, big, big before you try your homework, You cannot say sine of 75 minus sine of 30. You cannot distribute the word sine, okay? You'll follow the little pattern on your sheet, okay? Follow the pattern on your sheet. Why am I looking at the sheet? Okay, the pattern on your sheet says if you have sine of A minus B. Do y'all see the pattern?
Yes.
It says you're going to say sine of A, cosine of B, minus the cosine of A, and the sine of B.
That was plus.
All right, I did 45 minus 30. Do you see them? So you got to find the one you're using, okay? So in this case, this would be sine of what's my A?
45.
45. Cosine B, 30. Minus cosine A, sine B. You're putting it in a little pattern. Do you see the pattern on your sheet, Ava?
Yes.
I'm following that pattern, okay?
Yeah.
All right, now the sine of 45 is root 2 over 2. The cosine of 30 is root 3 over 2, all from your charts. The cosine of 45 is root 2 over 2. The sine of 30 is 1/2. I find that my pre-cal students are not super good, and honors pre-cal for that matter, of multiplying fractions anymore, because you haven't had to do it in a long time. You can multiply the top and the bottom. That's square root of 6 over 4 minus square root of 2
Can I check the third?
over 4. Square root of 6 over 4 minus square root of 2 over 4.
Square root 4.
Which you could just, no, you can't subtract square roots like that. That would be your final answer.
Okay.
You can't say like square root of 16 minus square root of 4 is square root of 12.
Okay.
Think about that when you're at home, okay? The answers look really kind of weird like that. So now, as you're packing up, let me make the point that I did 2 examples for you. Do y'all see what I mean?
Yes.
Also, look at your sheet. Notice that, look at example 1. I'm so sorry, girls, I'm hurrying. Look at example 1, or look at someone else's paper. On example 1, I found the cosine of 15 for you. Number 1, you're going to find the sine of 15, which is right up here on the board if you remember the end of the video. What can you do for tan of 15? You don't actually have to use the identity on the page. What do you know about tangent? It's sine over cosine. So if you want to find the tan of 15 fast, take the sine of 15 over the cosine of 15, okay? I'm probably going to assign this worksheet for homework. All of your patterns are there. Please let me know if it, go ahead, some of y'all, and try it tonight or tomorrow. If it's like too much, I can back off of it, but I think you'll be fine. Now I'll probably get a rash of people saying it's too bad, but I think you're honest, so I know you're honest, not I think. Bye, sorry.
Okay, thank you so much.